On that note, we'll get started. What do you think, Roy? Is it time?
Yeah, let's get started. Yeah.
Cool. Are you able to see my screen with the first slide?
I can see you screen with the first slide indeed, yes.
Fantastic. Perfect. Well, welcome in everybody. I'm really thrilled to see so many new faces today and also some repeat guests that we had from session number 1. Just to give a quick recap, because we have a lot of newcomers today, we had a session 1, I think it was 2 weeks ago, maybe a week ago, something like that. So not too long ago, and it was our first study group that we've ever hosted like this before. And so what I'll do is probably towards the very end, I'll pull up the URL or the webpage where you can go and you can find session number 1, because we record all these sessions. So we do have a replay available of session 1. Now, I will say that if you didn't attend session 1, it is not a prerequisite for session 2. None of these sessions have prerequisites. You can just drop in whenever. But I do recommend that you go back and watch session 1 in your spare time, because we talk a lot about the actual exam. We give you tips and tricks. We talk about what the exam covers, what kinds of services are on there, and a lot of advice like that. So definitely highly recommend that you go back and look through session 1, but certainly not a prerequisite for today's session. But on that note, we'll go ahead and get started with some frequently asked questions, because we get this question all the time when we do these presentations. And the answer is yes, this will be recorded and it will be sent out in about 24 hours prior or after today. And so whatever email you registered with to be here today to get this invite and get this link is the email that I will send out the video recording for. I will also send out the slideshow that you see right now. And I'm also going to be using a different software for questions, the practice exams, in just a second. And so I'll try to export that as maybe a PDF or something like that and send it that way. It's the first time I've used this in this capacity, so we'll see if it works. But either way, I'll find a way to get you these questions. So don't worry. Yes, this will be recorded. Yes, we will have slides available for download after the fact. Also, if you've never attended one of our workshops or webinars before, we love Q&A. Q&A is what makes these sessions great. So please, please, please ask questions as you have them. There should be a little bubble with a question mark in it in the webinar software that you're looking at right now. If you click on that, you should be able to ask us questions. And then myself and Roy are constantly looking at those questions as we're going through these sessions, and we'll either answer them right away or we might hold them to the end and then answer them at the end. So as a question pops to mind, go ahead and put it in, and that way we can create a backlog of those questions and answers. But that's it for the FAQ. If you have questions about that, let me know. Otherwise, we'll get started with today's agenda and today's session. So before we dive in, to the actual meat of the session, we'll talk about what session 2 is about, and then also the calendar for the rest of the sessions, because we have 4 total sessions. We will also be adding a new agenda to today's session called Revision Guide, which is where Roy is going to walk you through a really nifty system that he put up together. And then after that, we'll dive into practice exam questions. We have, is it 5? I think we have 5 total questions, give or take 1 or 2. And so we will go through those, and we'll spend quite a bit of time on them to make sure that everybody understands what the question is asking and what the correct answer is. And we'll also jump into the AWS console and take a look at what that looks like in there. And then after that, we'll just wrap up. So really simple, straight to the point. Let's get started, unless we have some questions. Let me check and see if we do have questions about that. I don't think so. Perfect.
No, we have no questions right now.
So like I mentioned before, we had session 1, which was on July 11th. That was really introductions about who we are and about the sessions and about the exams as well. Because we have so many new folks here today, I actually originally cut out introductions, but I probably should have left them in there. But that's okay. I'm Christophe Limpelaere. I'm the founder and trainer at cybr.com, where we do AWS security training. And yes, I do have the AWS Certified Security Specialty certification exam. I passed it back in April of this year, so a few months ago, but relatively recent. And then Roy, if you want to give it just a really quick introduction as well.
Yeah, so I'm Roy Long. I'm founder of Sky Purple Cloud. We're a cloud services company. So I'm following you along with this journey because I haven't passed my security specialty. I've done a lot of other certifications: Google Professional, AWS Professional, Aviatrix Multi-Cloud Networking, as well as CCSP, which is the ISC Squared certification. So this is going to be a first for me as well. I booked my exam already. My exam's booked for the 2nd of December, 2nd of August. That would be a way out, right? So my exam is booked between the 2nd and 3rd session, so I can report back on the 3rd session. Hopefully I will have passed, but there's a lot going on, so I know what a struggle it is to get all the learning done and study enough. So I'm with you on this journey.
Honestly, even if you don't pass it, that just means you'll have to retake it, and then that way you can compare notes and tell us what differences there were without breaking NDA. So that might be a benefit if you don't pass it, to be honest with you.
So you want me to fail?
I kind of do, yeah. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to put that out there. I do hope you pass, of course, because it's not fun to always have to repeat exams. But you've got this. Good luck. Thank you. Okay,
Thanks.
so that's a quick about us introductions. If you have any questions about that, let us know. But we're here today to talk about multiple practice exam questions to give you a rough idea. Actually, not a rough idea. I take that back. To give you a realistic idea, a good representation of what sorts of questions you can expect on the exam based on my experience of taking it, right? Roy and I both ended up writing these questions together. And so, I've gone through, I've vetted them, and they're a realistic representation of what you can expect on the exam itself, of course, without breaking NDA. So that's what we'll be doing primarily today, with a little bit of extra tips and tricks on top of that. Then on August 7th, that will be, so that's the day right before you take your exam. Is that right?
No, that's the week after. So I'm taking it on Friday the week before. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. I don't know why I thought it was the 8th. Sorry about that. But okay, so the week after you take the exam, you'll come back, you'll share your experience, and we'll have some additional practice exam questions. And then the last session on August 28th, we'll have multiple practice exam questions, and we'll do a review of the exam content as well. A quick note about that: if you registered for this session today, you'll have to re-register for session 3 and then again for session 4. That's just a limitation of the system we're using. Sorry about that. I know it's a little bit annoying, but I will put up a new registration form. So be on the lookout for the follow-up email for that new form. But otherwise, that's about it. Oops, there we go. Okay, so on that note, I'll hand over the reins to Roy for a few minutes here before we jump in and talk about the practice exam questions, if you want to give us a brief summary of what the revision guide is.
Yeah, can I share my screen here?
Yes, let me stop here and you should have access now.
Okay, there we go. I'm going to share my whole screen. Hopefully I've got no other stuff open. I think I've set it up correctly here. Okay, let's have this. Right, let me know if you can see my screen. I think I've got everything set up correctly here. Cool. Right. So I just wanted to share with everybody some of the tips that I use when I'm doing my exams and following through either some online learning or reading through some books or getting to a point where I'm studying. And I just want to dig in a little bit deeper into some of the content. But some of the knowledge that I want to gather, I want to keep somewhere so I can refer back to it, because there's a lot of content sometimes goes into great depth, sometimes doesn't. And sometimes you think, I wonder how that works really. And if you don't have a really great grounding, some of these concepts can be quite foreign. So what I like to do is I like to, as you can see, open up ChatGPT on the left here. I've got my Confluence wiki on the right here. And so what I'll do is, and I've prepared a couple of questions here. So let's just say, here we go. So I've got a couple of set questions here. So can you explain KMS key rotation to me? So if you don't understand how KMS key rotation works, just chuck a question into ChatGPT. But if you look at the prompt there that I've got, right, it says, please output the answer in textbook style format so I can capture my revision notes for the AWS Security Specialty exam. So then what that's done is it's prompted ChatGPT to not only output in a specific format, but also with a lens on it, which says, this has got to be relevant for the Security Specialty exam, right? And ChatGPT, like a lot of LLMs, is well aware of kind of the context provided by that and will hopefully appropriately answer that question. Now, I've not run this yet, so this is the first time I've run this question. Hopefully it won't fail on me live. And you can see, so what it's doing is giving me a really great introduction and overview of KMS. So it's starting with KMS, and then it's talking about the key rotation. It's talking about custom master keys, and then the importance of key rotation here, automatic key rotation, manual key rotation, and it's even giving me the steps to actually enable automatic key rotation here. give me some best practices. So this is really good content. So I could just like read through this once and think, oh, that's it, right? But what I like to do is I like to just click on the copy button at the bottom here, go over to my pages in, I think I've got a section for this, right? Infrastructure security. I'll just create a new page for this, paste this in here, take that title as the page title, and then just publish that. Right. Oh, I can't see my publish button because I've hidden it there. There we go. Right, so just publish that, and you can see some other pages that I've already done here. So I've got some overview stuff around the AWS security specialty. I've got some notes on obviously what we're doing now, the cyber study group. But then I've broken down into domains, which is what AWS do. They break their specialty down into domains, and so I've started logging specific content against those specific domains. And so I've got another one as well, just to kind of just show you it wasn't like a one-off fluke. Right? So please give me a detailed description of Amazon Macy. I don't know if you know where Macy is, but it basically is a tool that looks at S3 buckets and looks for SPI, PII, any sensitive content in those buckets. So I've put a question in that says, please give me a detailed description of Amazon Macy, together with use cases and where it would fit in an AWS security process for the pharmaceuticals industry. Right? Because I do a lot of work with life sciences, so I'm quite interested in how that actual service would be relevant to work that I actually do, so project work. So not just relevant in this case for the exam, but also relevant for my day-to-day work. So I'm going to take that. And again, I've put, please output the answer in textbook style format so I can capture my revision notes for the AWS security specialty exam. So some of these prompts, some of these, the context I use it over and over because it gives me really good output. Tried and tested formats. And so again, it's going to give me a really good oversight. Introduction of Amazon Macy, fully managed data security, data privacy service that uses machine learning, pattern matching to discover and protect sensitive data. So if you weren't aware of Amazon Macy, now you're aware of it. And so once this is finished outputting this, I'm going to then again copy and paste that into my Confluence wiki. It shouldn't take too long, but you see it's given me this in this example. It's given me some use cases for it: protecting patient information, securing clinical trial data, intellectual property protection, regulatory compliance, integration with CloudTrail, config, and Security Hub. And then it's given me a conclusion at the end, which I didn't even ask for. So I'm going to copy that, take it over into, I don't think I've got this a section for this actually. So I'm just gonna tag this as a new page at the end here, and just give it a section all on its own. So I don't know if you're aware, but there's a free version of Confluence. I think you can have up to 5, maybe 10 users for free on Jira Confluence. And I'm not a salesperson for Jira Confluence, by the way. I just think it's a really great tool to use for free. As you can see, it gives you, and it integrates with Jira as well. I know a whole load of people in our industry tend to use Jira for a lot of things, and this integrates with both the authentication for Jira, but also with like the Jira tasks, and you can tag on Confluence content to that. So there you go. That's a brief overview of what I do for some of my revision, and then I'll have all of this content to go through before the exam, so I can then refer back to my notes. And instead of taking paper notes, scribbling reams and reams of notes with pen and paper, or even typing it into the screen, it's just created all that content for me. I hope that helps.
I think it definitely would. I'm very partial to using Notion instead of Confluence. So maybe you and I can sync up after this and find a way to, like, I don't know if there's a way for us to sync it where it's not a manual effort or something like that, but it'd be nice to be able to offer a couple different formats. And then if you're okay with it, maybe we can share it as part of the study group as well, but we can talk about that afterwards.
Yeah. That works for me.
No, I think a system like that is invaluable, especially for me. And one of my tips that I would provide here is, instead of trying to do that for every single service that you think might be on the exam, I mean, if that's the way that it works for you, if you think that would benefit you, go for it. For me personally, I try to do stuff like that for services that maybe I'm less familiar with. That way I don't have just 1,000 different pages, 1,000 notes that I won't have time to go through. I can really just focus on the areas that I'm weaker in. And that way the services I already know super, super well. I don't worry about those. I focus on the stuff that I'm not as comfortable with.
Yeah, and sometimes for me, I think it's coming across new services as well.
Exactly.
So you come across a new service and you think, oh, I didn't even know that existed. How is that relevant to my exam, my like projects, my work? And so that's exactly what I did with that Amazon Macy example. As in, I knew what Amazon Macy was, by the way, but if it was a new service you didn't understand, you could give it a prompt like that, and it would give you that output, which is specific and tells you exactly why it's relevant to your particular industry.
Absolutely. I think that's a great tip. And as we talk about tips here, let's dive into the practice exam questions, and that way we can also share some additional tips about taking the actual exam and what you can do to increase your odds here. So what I'll do is I'll start off by sharing a URL. We're going to try something a little bit different today as compared to session 1. I'd love to get your feedback on it at the very end. But if you want to head over to this URL, I know you can't click on it. I try to make it as short as possible so that it's easy to type into your browser here. But go ahead and navigate to this URL. Let me know if you have any issues, because we're going to be using this software to look at the practice exam questions, and also after that, look at the answers and explanations. So the way this is going to work is we'll start off on this document, and then in the webinar software, I'm going to start a poll related to that question. So if we're looking at question number 1, I'll start poll for question number 1. They'll have A, B, C, D, E, or A, B, C, D, whatever it is. And then you'll select which answer you think is the correct answer. And we'll time it. So we'll have about 5 minutes per question. That way you have plenty of time to read through and try to pick the correct answer, what you think is the correct answer. So go
I
to this
just pasted
URL.
that. Yeah, I've just pasted it into the Q&A as well, so
Oh,
it's there
thank you.
now as a clickable link.
I keep forgetting you can do that. I appreciate you using your brain today as compared to mine. It's still waking up. It's still booting process. But I see people joining the document, so it looks like we don't have any issues. If you have issues accessing it, let me know in chat. Otherwise, give me a thumbs up if you're all good to go. And then I forgot to put on Do Not Disturb. You'd think I would remember to do that by now. I've done quite a few of these, but reminder to turn on Do Not Disturb.
Yeah, mine's on. Thanks for the reminder.
And let me switch over to this other screen really quickly here. I see I wonder if I can hide the mouses that are bouncing around. I didn't think about that being an issue. We've got little mice bouncing around. It's hilarious. All right, let me share this.
Yeah, I think if you click on your name and then follow, I need you to click on your name and goes to the first question. There we go.
Click spotlight me in the drop down to grab your teammates' attention. Okay, so let's do that. I'm going to hijack everybody's screens for a minute. Okay. Did you say I can hide them?
No, I just said I could see them.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think I can hide the the mice that are bouncing around. If you don't mind removing those from the screen, I think that'll be a little bit less distracting. Otherwise, it's going to be interesting. So I should have hid this actually. Let me hide this just for a second. I know a lot of you are reading, but don't cheat. We haven't started the exam yet. It is a timed exam. So again, just to remind, I've got a timer right here. So I'm going to set 5 minutes. As soon as I click on 5 minutes, I'm also going to start the poll. And then in the poll, you'll have the ability to do A, B, C, D, E. And so after the 5 minutes, we will reveal the answer and do an explanation. So countdown 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's get going.
So I've pasted the question into the Q&A as well for people who can't deal with the all the mice on the screen.
Got 1 minute left, 60 seconds. $15 seconds. If you haven't submitted your answer, go ahead and do that now. Just pick one, and then we'll look at the answer. All right. So, Roy, I'll let you take this one over, but we'll look at the selected
We're going to look at the
answers.
answer first.
Yep. So let's look at what people selected, and then we'll reveal the answer here. So we had 0% or 0 people selected A. So nobody chose A. We had 8% of people selected B. We had 43% selected C, 13% D, and then 34% E. So the most people selected C, and then second most was E. And the correct answer is, drum roll please.
It is C. The correct answer is C. So let me just read through the question. So it's kind of a real life scenario. So you're a cloud security administrator for a growing e-commerce company. You've noticed unusual activity in your AWS environment, such as unexpected spikes in network traffic and abnormal API call patterns. Your company relies heavily on AWS for its infrastructure, and you need to quickly identify and mitigate any potential threats. Given the situation, which of the following AWS services would be the most, and most is highlighted there, right? So it's means something in that question. And AWS are good at doing this as well. Most effective for automated threat detection, providing with necessary insights and alerts to address these anomalies. So obviously it's C, because GuardDuty is a managed threat detection service that continuously monitors for malicious and unauthorized behavior. It helps protect your AWS accounts and workloads. It uses machine learning, anomaly detection, and integrated threat intelligence to identify and prioritize potential threats. In this scenario, GuardDuty would be effective in detecting unusual activity patterns such as spikes in network traffic and abnormal API calls. That's what that service is specifically for. And it provides you detailed findings that you can then use to help mitigate the threats. So that's all you got to see. Very well done. I tried to throw a bit of a curveball in there with a couple of these answers. Some of these services you need to know for the security specialty exam, and some of them you should know that are completely incorrect for this particular scenario. So, for example, I'm just going to run through them top to bottom. So, AWS Shield, this service is a DDoS protection service, so completely irrelevant to the scenario we're talking about. It's important for protecting against DDoS, but it doesn't offer comprehensive threat detection of all types of unusual activities. AWS Config. Now, this could help, but only kind of once somebody started playing around with your services and your components, your infrastructure, right? Because it helps to assess, audit, and evaluate configurations on your AWS resources, and it's useful for ensuring compliance and managing configurations. So it would tell you if there's been a configuration change or a change to your compliance status, but it doesn't specialize in any kind of real-time threat detection or anomaly detection. AWS WAF, well, obviously WAF is web application firewall. It helps protect web applications from common web exploits, so completely irrelevant in this particular example. Focused on filtering and monitoring HTTP requests, but does not provide broad threat detection capabilities within AWS. And the last one, which could be something that could help, but if you look at how that question's written, it's quite complicated, and it says the most effective, right? And most effective usually means, the quickest to get to the problem, the quickest to identify the threat, and alleviate the threat. So while CloudTrail can provide insights into historical activities by querying the CloudTrail logs, it is not suitable for real-time threat detection. Athena allows you to analyze logs, and QuickSight can visualize the data, but they don't provide any kind of automated continuous monitoring or threat detection capabilities like the other services. And the setup will be a manual setup, querying and visualization, which is not efficient for immediate threat identification and response. I hope that makes sense to everybody. Any comments from your side, Christoph?
If you have any questions, go ahead and pop them into the Q&A. I'm going to add a couple of other tips and tricks here. So one of the ways that I approach a question like this, kind of like Roy was walking through here, is by, let's turn to red, let's do thick, is by looking at it from this perspective, right? You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 potential answers. So let's try to eliminate some. Let's increase our odds so that even if I have to guess, my odds are better than say 25% or whatever it is. So if I can get it to 50-50, that's a pretty good situation to be in. As Roy was saying, this one is an obvious no. Nobody selected it. So this one was just an easy one to knock out. That way you're just down to 4 potential answers. Config, as you think through the scenario, what's going on here, config's just not really going to be that relevant. So again, we can knock that one out. Now you're down to 3. And so you can really focus your attention on comparing and contrasting what those potential answers are and just keep knocking it down until ideally you're down to 2 potential answers. So that way, even if you have to guess, it's a 50-50 coin toss. That's a good situation to be in. The other thing, as Roy was pointing out, is looking at keywords. So stuff like most, or saying, something like near real time, keywords like that. If you see stuff like that in the question, the exam creators probably put it there for a reason, either to throw you off or to give you a hint as to which of the options would be better. Now, guard duty is definitely not real time. I think there was a recent article that came out that said that on average, it takes about 15 minutes or so to give you an indicator that something's going on. So it is not real time by any means. There is a delay. But if you're looking at the last 3 potential answers, actually last 2, because this one's definitely not correct either. If you're looking at the last 2 here, you're still talking about something that's going to be much, much slower. You've got a pipeline here versus something that's dedicated to threat detection. So I would lean towards this one. And then, just looking at some of those keywords that you have in the question and in the answers can really, really be beneficial. So that's typically how I approach exam taking, especially for AWS certifications. Start knocking down the least likely answers, then look for some of those keywords in the answer, and then narrow it down from there. So hopefully that's helpful. I think we got a couple questions or at least comments that came in here. So one, for example, said that they got tricked by E because of API calls and saw that the question was threat detection, not logging and monitoring. And then somebody else said chose C in the end. So yeah, that's good feedback. So even just if it's not a question, if you have a comment about here's why I chose XYZ answer, but now that makes more sense, that gives us feedback and helps us move forward. So thank you.
And just bear in mind, these are close to exam questions. They're not actual exam questions. So we actually went through and we created these and reviewed these ourselves. So if you feel they're not worded correctly or there's something you don't agree with, just again, pop it in the Q&A.
And we make mistakes all the time. So if you see something that you disagree with, let's have that debate. Let's have that conversation. Even if it's right, that conversation can help others that are in the conversation. So thanks for putting that out, Roy. That's helpful. All right. If we don't have any more questions about this question, then we can move on to the second one. Let me go ahead and hide this for now so that actually, no, we can leave it up. It's okay. It's been revealed. So now we'll move on to question number 2. And what I might do is I might actually bump this down to 4 minutes, just because I noticed that after about 4 minutes, we didn't get any more submissions so that we can save a little bit of time. And then we will get started. So I'll do this. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Start the timer and start the poll. quickly here, a couple of people are not finding the question. You can click on my name to follow my screen. That way it will shift your screen, or you can scroll to the right. All the questions are on the same sheet. You just have to move to the right. All right, we've got 10 seconds. Go ahead and select an answer if you haven't yet. 10 seconds. Okay, let's look at the results. So we had 20% selected A, we had 12% selected B, 52% selected C, 4% selected D, and then 12% selected E. And the correct answer is C. So let's read the question first, and then we'll look at the answers and go through the explanation. So we've got a software company that's implementing AWS Secrets Manager to manage API keys for various third-party services. They've created a custom Lambda function to handle the rotation of these API keys. And the DevOps team has set up the secrets in Secrets Manager and then configure it for automatic rotation every 30 days. However, the secret does not appear to be rotating. And when looking at CloudTrail logs, they see the following JSON snippet. And the team confirms that the Lambda function exists and that the rotation code functions as expected since they're able to manually execute the function. What is the most likely cause of this error? So let me highlight a few things here. The first one I'll highlight is that the team confirms that the Lambda function exists, so that's important, and that the rotation code functions as expected because they're able to manually execute the function. This is vitally important. This is basically the answer right here. Some other useful information is we're managing API keys. Of course, Secrets Manager, that's important. And then let's see what else. That's probably it. Well, if we're looking at the actual JSON here from CloudTrail, error executing Lambda with the error in here during the create secret step, excuse me. So we have that here, and we have rotation failed, source IP address of secretmanager.amazonaws.com. So why is the answer C? Why is the answer that the resource policy for the rotation function doesn't grant the service principal of secretsmanager.amazonaws.com access to Lambda invoke function permission? Why is that the answer? Well, I created a diagram to hopefully help us with this explanation here, because if you've never used Secrets Manager before, it can be a little bit of a convoluted answer. So let's walk through this. Can I make this full screen? Is that possible? Can I hide the toolbar? There we go. That's a little bit better. Okay. So if you're not familiar with it, AWS Secrets Manager, as the name implies, helps you manage secrets. You could put all kinds of different secrets in there. It could be a username and password for something like an RDS database. It can be an API token, an OAuth token, a lot of different types of anything that's basically a key value pair. You could store in Secrets Manager in a more secure way than just typing the code as static code in your code repository, which you always want to avoid, you never want to do. So you can store that in Secrets Manager, and then through the Secrets Manager API, you can retrieve that credential and use it for your database, your code, whatever it is. But a good practice with secrets is to try to rotate them on a fairly regular basis. As an example here in the scenario, we're talking about rotating every 30 days. The process for rotation at a high level works a little bit like this. So you have Secrets Manager, and then you can use something like AWS Lambda. Now, if you're using a service, or if you're using Secrets Manager for a service like RDS, then it's called a managed secret. In that case, you don't actually need to use AWS Lambda. I think I have, if you go to this link right here, I'm pretty sure it explains it. If not, it's somewhere in that documentation, but it will show you which services support managed secrets, where you don't have to use a Lambda function to automatically rotate it. It's managed for you. It does it for you through AWS. But in the case of API tokens, OAuth tokens, or any other key value pair like that, you do have to use an AWS Lambda function to rotate the secret on a regular basis. So because our scenario specifically says, actually, I probably should have highlighted this as well. I did. To manage API keys, because it says manage API keys, you do have to use an AWS Lambda function. And so the process with Lambda works like this. First, Secrets Manager within 30 days or at that 30-day mark will trigger the rotation, which we'll call an AWS Lambda function. That Lambda function will retrieve the secrets, grab the secret data from Secrets Manager. Then it will try to rotate the secret. And then if it's successful, then the rotation was successful. If not, then it will fail. Then it will store the new secret in Secrets Manager, and Lambda will receive a confirmation. This diagram was actually created by AI. So think of this as high level. It's probably not 100% technically accurate, but conceptually, this is roughly what happens behind the scenes. There's also a loop. So if it tries to rotate the secret and it's not successful, then it will keep trying for a bit until hopefully it is successful. Then if not, it will just kind of die and fail. And you can see that failure within CloudTrail, and that failure would look something like this. So if you were to go in CloudTrail and retrieve the error code or the API call, then you would see an event name of rotation failed, and then the error message, in this case, saying error when executing the Lambda function. So now that we know that about AWS Lambda and Secrets Manager and how they work together, we can deduce that in order for AWS Secrets Manager to be able to call that AWS Lambda function, Secrets Manager needs to have the proper permissions to call that Lambda function. That's something you have to grant permissions for. And the way that you would grant permission for one service to call another service, in this case, AWS Lambda, is through something like a resource-based policy. And when you create that Lambda function, you will attach that resource-based policy that will look something like this. So in this case here, with this sample policy, we have an effect of allow for the principal service of Secrets Manager, the action of Lambda invoke, and then the ARN resource for that specific function. And then we also have a condition string equals for an AWS source account to avoid confused deputy, but we won't talk about that right now. That's a slightly different topic. So if we're missing this resource-based policy, but we created the function and we created a secret in Secrets Manager, when Secrets Manager tries to invoke that function, because there's no resource-based policy allowing that invocation, it will fail. Secrets Manager will not be able to call that Lambda function, which means the Lambda function will not try to rotate the secret. And so you would see an error message like this within the AWS CloudTrail trail. So now that we know that, and I'm going to pause for a second to see if there's any questions about that so far. I don't see any, so we'll keep going. If you have questions about what I just said, let me know. But now that we know what we just talked about, we can start to knock down some of these potential answers. So let me get back. Where do I get my UI back? I should have learned these shortcuts before doing this. Oh, here we go. All right. So now that we know that, we can go through these and we can start to knock out some of these incorrect answers. For example, if we go to A, the Lambda function's IAM execution role lacks permission to access Secrets Manager. The reason that we can knock this out is because of this right here, what I highlighted at the bottom, which says that the DevOps team confirms that the Lambda function exists and that the rotation code functions as expected because they're able to manually execute the function. So if they're able to go in and they're able to manually trigger that rotation function, and that does rotate the secret, then that means that the Lambda function IAM execution role does not lack permissions. It's able to go out to Secrets Manager. it's able to do this part right here, everything below this, right? But what we want is we want this part right here. We want Secrets Manager to be able to trigger it on a schedule. We don't want to manually come in and have to trigger this every 30 days. Our team's too busy for that. You can automate it. There's no reason to do it manually. But because they're able to do steps from here below, but not that first step, that helps us knock out this first potential answer. We can also knock out all the other answers based off that, because if the secrets KMS encryption key doesn't allow Secrets Manager to use it, then again, these steps right here would not work, right? We wouldn't be able to manually go in, trigger that Lambda function, and rotate the secret while we're doing that manually. That would also fail because we wouldn't have access, we wouldn't have the proper KMS policies attached, etc. Now, the other one here, same thing, Lambda function is in a different region than the secret in Secrets Manager. Again, we wouldn't be able to trigger it manually. And then the Lambda function's timeout is set too low for the rotation process to complete it, causing it to error out before it's able to rotate the secret. So literally all of the other potential answers can be knocked out from this single line right here. The reason I created this question that way, even though the exam will probably have a little bit more variety in the potential answers, is because I want to highlight how important it is to find those key sentences or find those keywords in the question itself, because a lot of times they'll tell you what they're going for in the potential answers, and that can help you knock them down. Any questions about that? Does that make sense? Did I go too fast through it? Roy, I know you had some questions about this one as well. What do you think?
Yeah, so I was sending this question ahead of time, and I had the same challenge trying to work this one out. Now, all I can say is if I came across this question on an exam, I would probably flag this and move on straight away, so I could come back later and think about it. And in the exam, that's one thing you can do. If you see a question like this and you think, my head's not in this straight away, just flag it and move on to the next one. Don't spend time trying to get, going insane over a single question. Get to the end of the exam. If you've got time left, come back to it and then spend more time thinking through it, and don't go insane like I nearly did.
Really good advice. You don't want to waste the time. You don't want to run down the clock when you have many other questions to go through. If you can't answer it within about 1 to 2 minutes is my personal rule. You could do 3 to 4 minutes, whatever you want. Then you need to flag it and move on and then come back later. And actually on that note, not calling out the person that did this, I don't even know who it is because I can't see it through the software, but I saw somebody answer within about 20 seconds of me revealing the answer. That's really dangerous at this level of exam, and they got the wrong answer. The reason I do not recommend doing that is that might work with easier exams, but with these more challenging exams, a lot of times they'll try to sneak in an answer that looks right at first glance. But if you didn't really digest what the question is asking you and the other potential answers, they'll trick you if you go too fast. So if you're like, oh, I know this one, bam, move on, slow down. I promise you'll want to slow down. You might get some right doing that. You'll probably get more wrong doing that. At least personally, when I've tried to do that with this level of either professional or specialty exams, if I try to rush through the answer because I think it's easy, I'm probably getting the wrong one. So slow down a little bit, give yourself some time. You have 3 hours to go through this exam. I had about an hour left over. That's plenty of time to go through and review. There's no need to rush through the question. So I'm not trying to make you feel bad for doing that. I'm not trying to call you out or anything. It's just, I saw that and I'm like, oh, that's a really good point. I've been there, I've done that, and I've regretted it. So that's the other tip that I would give you. And then finally, yes, you can expect to see some code snippets like this one. There weren't that many on my version of the exam. I probably had maybe, 10 or so, where maybe it was showing something related to CloudTrail. Maybe it was showing some logs, like examples of attacks or something like that. So you can absolutely expect to see these types of code snippets, but you don't have to be a code expert or anything, right? It's not going to show you Python and ask you to write Python, for example. It's just going to show you something that even if you're not from a coding background, you can read what the code is saying, or in this case, the JSON is saying, and you can kind of figure out what they're going for there. So just as a tip, that's important.
And just another thing, did you work out how to get rid of all those mice all over your screen, Christoph?
So I did.
Yeah, I did as well. Just
Oh, you have to manually do it too? I thought I did it for everybody.
I think it's on a case by case basis. I mean, we could ask if in the Q&A if people are still seeing all the cursors, but I did it on my side on the menu on the left hand side of the view.
If you go to view and then click on multiplayer cursors, that will disable those annoying cursors.
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought that did it for everybody, or I'd have mentioned it. So thank you for bringing that up.
No, I think unless people are that did do it for everyone, unless you did it exactly the same time as me, right?
Well, I'm not seeing very many questions, so I don't know if that's a good sign or a bad sign. Are we losing people? Can I get a thumbs up? Are people asleep? What's going on? Can we get some engagement here? Any questions so far? Anything that doesn't make sense, that we're not explaining properly, or are we explaining well? Getting some thumbs up. All right, maybe we're just doing a good job. That's good. I'm just always skeptical. I'm like, I don't think I'm doing that good of a job. So give me some feedback here. But hey, we're getting a lot of thumbs up, so that's a good sign. And then just to reiterate, I know some people joined after we mentioned this. Yes, this is going to be recorded. Also, I'm going to find a way to get this information to you. I don't know exactly how to do that yet. It might be a PDF document. I'm not too sure, but we will be sending out these questions and explanations. So you don't have to worry about trying to take a million screenshots or anything like that. We've got you. We'll send it via email after the fact. But moving on to question number 3, unless you had anything else to add to that one, Roy.
No, that's great. Let's move on to number 3.
Cool. Okay. So let's do number 3. How are we on time here?
I think we're at the hour now, so we got
Okay.
30 minutes.
30 minutes. I think we'll keep it at 4 minutes then. I think that was pretty good. So, all right, question number 3 is starting in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good luck. Now 1 minute left. 10 seconds. Go ahead and lock in your answers. All right. So let's take a look at the results. We had 7% selected A, 0% selected B. All right. We got 3% C, 57% D, and then 30% E. The correct answer was D, enable Amazon Macy at the organizational level. Roy, this was your question, so go for it.
Yeah, so I'll just read through the question first, and I'll give you a bit of additional information about this question. So you're a security administrator for a healthcare company that stores sensitive, personally identifiable information, PII and SPI, across multiple S3 buckets. To comply with regulatory requirements and ensure the security of this sensitive data, you need to identify and classify PII and SPI data across all S3 buckets in both your primary AWS account and multiple linked accounts. What is the best approach to achieve this, ensuring comprehensive coverage? So I gave you a little bit of an insight into this when I did the revision guide earlier on. I kind of gave you some insights into what Amazon Macy was. That was purely intentional, just for those of you that were being observant. What I also tried to do with this question is give you an example of what a question in a real exam might look like. You might get some obviously wrong answers if you know the AWS services, and you might get some very similar answers, which is kind of, and this is kind of indicative of the results that we're seeing, that 55% D, 33% E, right? You get two similar answers, but the answer that you're supposed to pick, whether or not both would work, the answer would be in the question, right? So what is the best approach to achieve this, ensuring comprehensive coverage? Right, so let's walk through the answer. I won't go straight to the correct answer yet. Let's walk through the answer. So storage lens, A. So storage lens is not a tool for reviewing SPII. It's an advanced analytics solution which is designed to help you understand and analyze and optimize your storage usage across multiple buckets, multiple accounts in S3. It doesn't look at SPI, PII. It doesn't do anything. So you can cross that one off straight away if you knew what that was. B, enable bucket versioning. So that's not going to do anything with respect to telling you what's there. It's going to allow you to understand if multiple versions of a bucket exist of an object exist in your bucket rather, and it aids in recovery and protection against accidental deletions or rollback to a previous version of an object if you want to do that. It has no implication in classification of sensitive information at all. And this one made me laugh. I'll throw it in there. Right? Implement S3 bucket policies to deny public access. What's that going to do? That's not going to do anything. It's just going to stop people getting to it from the public, right? So that, in my mind, if you understand a little bit about S3, that's going to be quite obvious that is the wrong answer. Although there are some people, one person selected that. I should be careful what I say, right? So just go and review the S3 services, the S3 tools and utilities, and just understand what the roles are for each of those. So let's took it. So obviously it's going to be D or E, based on what I just said on the other options. So activate Amazon Macy on a bucket by bucket basis in each individual account, right? Which is the E. I think it's E, isn't it, on there? Yeah. And then review the findings. Or D, enable Amazon Macy at the organizational level. So the question says the best, right? The best would be, most comprehensive, the easiest, and the best practice that you would expect to be used to use in a job role somewhere where a company would expect you to know this information and this process if you're in a role that requires you to be looking after security of S3 and SPII, for example. So the correct answer is obviously D, because it's at the organizational level. Amazon Macy, as I mentioned before, is a fully managed data security and privacy service that allows machine learning and pattern matching to discover and protect sensitive data. So by enabling it at the organizational level, instead of on a bucket by bucket basis, you can automatically discover and classify SPII, PII across all S3 buckets in all accounts in your organization. And a centralized approach like this simplifies the management and ensures comprehensive coverage. Okay, anything you want to add to that, Christoph?
Well, like you said, and I'm going to keep doing this with every question because it's so important, at least the way that I take exams, is mentally highlight some key stuff. Like here, ensure security of sensitive data, blah, blah, blah. You need to identify and classify. Identify and classify. As soon as you see that, you can immediately knock out bucket policies, because bucket policies do nothing to identify or classify. They only block. So if this question were worded differently, did not have anything to do with identifying and classifying, only blocking, then that might change the answer a little bit, right? Same with bucket versioning, has nothing to do with identifying and classifying. If you don't know S3 storage lens, you might still keep that in your back pocket. But of course, you got Amazon Macy twice here, so that's also an indication, right? Like if you've got 5 potential answers and one service is in 3 different answers, that's not a guarantee. They might just be doing that to trick you, but a light bulb should be going in your head like, hey, maybe they put that service in here 3 times because it's important. I didn't realize I turned on the music. How did I do that? I must have pressed a shortcut. I don't know. Maybe somebody else took control. I don't know. But yeah, we can play some lo-fi hip hop music if you guys want. Otherwise, I think that covers it really well. Any questions on that? Yeah, I gotta say, especially in today's session, we're getting a lot of correct, like the vast majority of people are getting the correct answers this time around. So that's interesting in comparison to session one. Session one, I think we had more incorrect answers than correct, and this time it's flipped around. So, all right, good job. Good job, everybody. You are paying attention. Nice work. Cool. So on that note, let's move over to question number 4, unless we see some questions popping up. Question number 4 is interesting. So let's get started in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Just realized I did not make this a multiple answer question. My apologies. Just select one or the other that you think is correct. Sorry about that. Got 1 minute left. Got 10 seconds. Go ahead and lock in your answers. All right, so let me publish the results. We had 8% select A, 26% select B, 47% C, and 17% D. I meant to do a select 2 option, totally messed that up, but that's okay. Let's walk through it and let's see which ones were the correct answer. Correct answers were C and D. So create a new signing profile, update all relevant CI/CD pipelines to use the new profile, and then revoke the developer's signing profile after their departure. And then D, remove the developer's IAM permissions related to AWS Signer to prevent them from accessing the signing profile. The question was, a financial technology company uses AWS Signer, which is an AWS service that enables you to sign code, to sign their Lambda deployment packages for various serverless functions and microservices. A senior developer with access to multiple signing certificates is leaving the company in 2 weeks from today. My commentary is not in there, right? But you can deduce that. The security team wants to ensure that the developer's access is properly revoked and that there's no risk of unauthorized use of the signing certificates after their departure. So which of the following actions should the security team take? Select 2. So let's walk through a quick explanation. I say quick. Let's walk through an explanation of what AWS Signer is, roughly how it works, and then why it was C and D and not A or B. So like I said, AWS Signer is a code signing managed service. And so if you're not familiar with code signing is or what code signing is, it's really just the process of signing something like an executable or any code or script and basically attaching the author's identity to that document. So if you're writing code, if you're the author of that code and you're deploying that to Lambda or you're deploying a container image, you want to be able to put a stamp on there and say, yes, this is coming from me. I'm the author of this code. And you can trust that it hasn't been tampered with or either maliciously or accidentally by somebody else as I was deploying this code. So whenever you download programs from the internet, a lot of times you'll see a hash of what that file should be. And so as you download that executable, binary, whatever it is, you can compare hashes and see if it's the same one. That's essentially the concept of digital signatures in a nutshell. Now, behind the scenes, it kind of looks a little bit like this. You've got your file or your code. You pass it through a hash function, which gives you a digest. You then encrypt that information with a private key that will generate your signature. And then you package that signature up with your code. And you now have the signed code that you can upload to S3 or to your Lambda function or whatever. And then whoever downloads that or if you're deploying that Lambda package or deploying that container image, then you can verify that signature by grabbing the signature, decrypting it with your public key, and you'll retrieve or get the hash through the digest, compare them. And if the hash values match, if the digest match, then that means you're good to go. It came from who you believe it came from. So that's essentially what code signing is doing. If you've never used AWS Signer before, some of you may not even be familiar with the fact that this service exists. To be candid with you, I've actually never used it in production myself. I may or may not have had a question on the exam related to AWS Signer. And so after the exam, I did a lot of deep diving and research in it. And so I played around with it a little bit, and that's what prompted this question here. So that's why I threw it in here. I want you to get familiar with the service. You may or may not see something related to this on the exam itself. But a few things I need you to understand and keep in mind about this service. To explain that, I'm going to do a couple things. One, we're going to exit out of full screen for this. I'm going to pull up my browser. And we're going to go to the console. And we're also going to open this up here. Of course, I have to sign back in. So let's go to the signer service. And let's also look at their documentation really quickly here. Actually, no, let's start with signing profiles first. So when you go through Signer, when you first get started with Signer, you have to create what's called a signing profile. So you'll go through here and we can do test 2 because I already have a test 1. That will be your profile name for your signing profile. And then you would select the signing platform. So as of right now, Signer really only supports either Lambda functions or container images. It also supports IoT firmware, I believe. You don't really see it in here. The process for that is a little bit different. I don't think it's supported through the console, which is why you're not seeing it here. But let's go ahead and select AWS Lambda and pretend like I'm going to use this for signing deployment packages to AWS Lambda. You can set a signature validity period. I believe the minimum is 1 day. So we'll just do 1 day, but it could be many, many months, many years. You could set a tag value if you wanted to. I don't need one. So we'll go ahead and create. Of course, because I selected it, now it's going to force me to create a tag. That's okay. And so now we have our signing profile, and we can create what's called a signing job. We have a profile ARN, a versioned profile ARN that we can reference, the signature validity period, whether it's active or not, what platform it's for, stuff like that. And we can click on Start Signing Job. Now, to create a signing job, you first have to select the code asset source location. So if you have code that you've uploaded to Amazon S3, I've named my bucket test signer code asset location. I've got a basic function.zip because that's what I would upload to my Lambda function. It's just got a Python script in there. It's not an actual valid Lambda function or anything. We're not going to run it, so that's okay. We'll just select an object version. And then we need a signature destination path with a prefix. So we'll do browse S3. I created a test signer signature destination location. I'll select that, and then I'll just start my job. And what it will do is it will go through and it will grab that first zip document that we were looking at. So it will go in this S3 bucket right here. It'll grab this function.zip and it will sign it for you, and it will output the result in our signature destination location. You would then download this zip archive. And within that zip archive, you would see something like this. Hopefully that's big enough. There we go. You would see your function. So that's my function.py that I uploaded in this zip archive. And you would also see this directory that that AWS Signer created for you called meta-inf. And within that, you have this document, AWS Signer signature v1.0.sf. So now you would go into AWS Lambda and you would configure Lambda to check this signature. So whenever I would push changes or whenever I would deploy that Lambda function, Lambda would communicate with Signer. It would check to see if it's a valid signature or not. If it's not a valid signature, that means it's been tampered with. It doesn't match up. The digest can't match up. As a result, it would reject or warn, depending on how you configure it, but it might reject that deployment entirely and send you an alert saying, hey, this code's been tampered with. We did not deploy it, or we did deploy it, but just as an FYI, the signatures did not match up, right? So back to our scenario and to this documentation page. If we have a senior developer, like in our scenario, that has created that signing profile and they've deployed many different AWS Lambda functions, that means they have a lot of signatures out there, right? If they're going to leave in 2 months or 2 weeks, whatever, I can't remember what I said. I think it was 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Yeah, 2 weeks. If they're going to leave in 2 weeks, we want to handle that gracefully, right? Because I said select 2 options, you would be looking for the 2 best potential options. I threw in a trick potential answer, and that trick potential answer is one that many of you selected. So I want to make sure I spend a little bit of time on that. And it was this one right here. B. The reason it's not B is highlighted in the documentation. And let me highlight this even more with an effective start time set to the developer's last day. So one of the key things with revoking signatures, especially when you're using the revoke signing profile API, which would revoke our entire profile. So you can either use revoke signing profile or revoke signature. If you just do revoke signature, then it would just revoke one of those signatures. So like the one that we just created, versus if you're revoking an entire profile, then it would revoke the entire test2 profile and any signatures within that profile, which you could have many, many different signatures within that one profile. So if you revoke the entire profile based on a certain date, then it will revoke everything after that. Make sure that it's no longer valid, but sticks around in your console so that you remember that it existed for historical purposes. Or you can just invalidate individual signatures. The reason that it's not B, even though it would seem like that would be the correct answer, is because unfortunately, or I say unfortunately, it's probably there for a good reason, but with the revoke signing profile API, you cannot select a date in the future. You have to select an effective start time in the past. The start time cannot be in the future, and then the effective start time can be changed to an earlier date and time by repeating the revocation, but cannot be revised to a later date and time. So because the question is in the present tense, right? And it's saying they're leaving in 2 weeks, so they haven't left yet, then we would not be able to set an effective start time for date to the developer's last day because we can't do that in the future. So that's a little bit of a, I know that's very nitpicky and tricky, and you kind of have to know that at a deeper level. So I put that in there to be purposefully challenging, to show you that some of these questions and answers can sometimes lean on some key API concepts like that or technical details that really you would only know if you studied this documentation very well or if you use the service in production. And so a lot of times the exam is trying to trick you that way to see whether you have that experience or whether you're just kind of exam dumping. It's not super common, right? A lot of times it's not going to be necessarily that detailed into API calls, but I did see some questions like that on my exam. So I wanted to make sure I included some as well. Does that make sense? I know that was a long explanation for that.
Yeah, I've never actually seen this in production either. I don't think anything that I've worked on has used the AWS signer either, so I'd probably been in the same boat.
I don't think a lot of people use this service, to be completely honest. And so, yeah, it's one of those where I'm like, oh, let's go ahead and include it in there because I don't want people surprised by a service they may not even know exists being on the exam. It does exist. It's a real AWS service. It's very legitimate. It's not used that often, I don't think. At least not right now. All right. Do we have any questions about that? How are we on time?
We haven't got enough time for a fifth question, rather. We've got time for the question, but not for the answer.
So maybe we could just leave that as a teaser. You can go through it and do your research if you got it wrong, right?
Yeah, we can do that.
I think it was one of your questions, right?
Yeah, it was. It was.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't see any questions. Oh, wait, I do see.
I think it was just a comment there about the. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I don't see any questions about this. If you have questions about this one, let me know. Happy to go through it. Otherwise, let's go ahead and move on to the last one. We're probably not going to have time for an in-depth explanation here, so we'll just pop up the question, and then maybe just let's do 2 minutes and see how that goes. Got 10 seconds. Got an even split almost. Well, it was until the last second there. We always had an even split between C and D. So we had 18% voted A, 12% voted B, 25% C, 31% D, and 12% E. This is a pretty good spread. I like this question. We got a good spread of answers. And the correct one is C, create a new CMK and update the key alias to point to the new CMK. So I know we're running out of time. How do you want to handle this, Roy?
Yeah, so I'll just go through why the correct answer is correct, and just I've got some link. I've had the good sense to actually create some links. I'll put the links in the Q&A just quickly, and we can send those across after the webinar as well. But basically, if you've got a customer managed key and you want to rotate it in KMS on your AWS infrastructure, you can't automate that key rotation because the customer needs to provide you that key material. So just bear that in mind when you're talking about customer managed keys and rotating customer managed keys. Just remember that you can't, there's two key things. You can't automatically rotate a customer managed key, right? The other thing is in KMS, you can't update a KMS key either. You can't update a customer managed key in KMS. So just bear those two things in mind. So what you'd have to do is create a new CMK, update the key alias to point to the new CMK so you don't break your application, and then you rotate it like that. So you create a new key, point the alias to that new key, and then your application continues to function. And so that minimizes configuration changes, ensures the application continues to function without any interruption. And I will paste the two links I've got for KMS rotation and key material.
We've also got them right here on this explanation in the document. If you're accessing that, I think you can click on the link directly. If not, like I said, I'm going to find a way to send this out to you. And so we'll have those documentation links as well you can access.
Excellent, thanks. Would you have got this right on the exam, Christoph?
That's a good question. I don't know. I get really messed up in the head when it comes to AWS KMS concepts, to be completely honest with you. Like, it doesn't matter how many times I do it. It's one of those things where, oh, key policies, then you have key rotation, then you have this, then you access management. And I'm just like, oh, this is so hard to keep up with. So KMS is one of those services that I struggle with a lot, and I have to spend extra time when I'm configuring it to make sure that I'm not screwing it up. So it's possible that I would have messed this one up, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I saw something similar on a example question some time back, which is why I kind of thought I'd do something similar, because it's like you say, KMS is a beast unto itself, right? It's and I'm the same. You know, you don't use it all the time, but it's critical for everything.
Really is. Yes. Okay, cool. Well, thank you everybody for attending. I think this was a good session. We got some good feedback. Not too many questions, so hopefully that's a good sign. But it would be super helpful if you can, as you're exiting here, answer this quick poll for us, just to give us an idea on the pace of it. Like, are we going too fast with explanations? Are we going too slow? Should we try to cram more questions and explain less? Should we keep this pace? Just give us that feedback so that way we can implement that for the last two sessions that we're going to have. But otherwise, thank you for attending. I really appreciate it. Roy, was there anything else that you wanted to mention as people exit here?
No, I'll give an update on my exam progress once we have the next call.
That's right. Next time Roy will either be a certified man or not.
Indeed.
We'll get some actual production feedback on the real exam, the real deal. All right, cool. Thanks everybody for joining today. Thanks for answering the poll. I'll stick around for a couple more minutes just to give a chance for people to answer this, but we'll see you next time. Don't forget, I'll send that follow-up email with the recording of this video and with the practice exam questions and with the slides. I'll also include the link on how you can register for session 3. So you'll have to re-register for that one. Don't forget to do that. That's important. Otherwise, have a great day or a great evening, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for attending.
Thanks everyone. See you next time.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.